This is Good Noticing.
Hi, Ash.
Hi, Claire. Happy holidays. It's our last episode of the year.
No way. I can't believe that. Can I tell you something? I was talking to my barista today.
Uh-huh.
And I told her that this was our first time ever taking 2 full weeks off at Christmas.
Yeah, we've never taken even, I think, 1 week off at
And
Christmas.
I said, we've never taken time off for Christmas before because I live in this scarcity mindset where I think if I take any time off, everybody will forget about me over the weekend. I'll lose everything.
Yeah.
That's just like, but 1 week and everything would crumble.
And by the end of the conversation, she said, I'm sorry, who were we talking about again?
No, well, then I was like, but I've actually heard from other podcasters that it's smart to take some time off because it's like, it gives people time to like listen to the backlog that sometimes we're almost like a tidal wave of podcast episodes and people can't keep up. So it's wasted. And then I was like, but that was true of our old timeless content. Now maybe that we're doing more topical weekly stuff. We should have never taken time. We should have taken weeks off when we had a chance. And now we're losers and we're going to fuck up.
Did she have any sage wisdom?
I can't remember what her advice was. I was too wrapped up in my own neuroses. And I hadn't even had my coffee yet.
Well, I think it'll be nice. I think it'll be nice to start next year with a new podcast yet again. Every day, I think we should act like everything is new.
Anyway, Ashley, do you have any news? Do you have any announcements? Do you have any recommendations for the people?
Oh my God, tomorrow we are going to be at the Strand bookstore talking to Max Lawton about his translation of the German novel Scattenfreude.
Also just about translation in general. He has like a tall order because maybe 12, 15 years ago, I took...
How old is he? Older than 15?
You don't know what I was going to say at all.
Okay.
When I was in college, I heard a translator give a talk about translation, and I found it deeply fascinating. And that's why I've been pursuing another conversation about translation all this time. And I think like I have a real idea of what I'm expecting out of this in my head.
Okay.
And Max, if you're listening, I hope you live up to that person that I can't really recall exactly.
I guess the problem is the weight rests equally upon us to direct a conversation that people find interesting.
Not people, Claire.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, will it live up to what I was hoping for?
Yeah, you guys should come, but it's kind of for Claire.
Anyway, it's at the Strand. It's at 7 maybe?
Yeah, I think it's about 7 p.m.-ish.
But check our Instagram. There's tickets at an Eventbrite. It'll be really fun. It's also a great time to come and get last-minute gifts. I actually think they do give a discount on books if you come to the event.
Oh, cool.
So I do think if you're looking to buy some books anyway, come to the event afterwards, do a little stroll and chat.
Sorry to aunt out too hard on you, but books are such a good gift. That happened to me when I had a niece. I said, actually, buying books for kids is so cool.
You know what I'm really excited for one day in my life? Mac doesn't know what Holes is about. He's never read or seen Holes.
Oh, he is going to love Holes. Should we read it now?
No, I want to put blinders on him. I'm like, don't ruin it for yourself before you could read it with our 8-year-old.
Oh, it's going to be so fun.
You know what I just saw?
What?
Apparently Disney was trying to do an all-girls version of like a remake, but with girls. Like Shia LaBeouf is a girl at a girl detention center this time.
Oh, I guess the tough part about that is I do think like forcing boys to do manual labor is like all fun for kids, but forcing girls to do manual labor is like maybe a bridge too far.
Well, it was so funny because I saw a tweet that had just got canceled, and the tweet was like, the gender swapped Holes is over at Disney Plus. And somebody tweeted, and they're like, do you think they finally just said it out loud? Gender swapped Holes, a movie for kids. Talk about the liberal agenda. And on TV, it'll be buttholes and penis holes coming in and out of your granddaughter's face. Listen,
you don't always have to say the quiet part out loud. We were all thinking buttholes and penis holes
coming out of your granddaughter's face. Like a snuffleupagus.
No.
Anyway, Ashley, do you have any recommendations for the people coming up on this holiday season?
Yeah, okay. I have 3 recommendations this week, as per usual. One of them is the You're Still the One cover, Shania Twain song covered by Boy Genius on BBC Live Lounge. It came up in autoplay recently. I'd never heard it before.
And
it's
every day we get on this podcast
beautiful.
And we talk shit about the algorithm, and yet
here it is presenting me with a Shania Twain cover that is absolutely gorgeous to listen to. I cannot recommend it more. My next recommendation is I'm going to link this TikTok video. I hate to recommend a TikTok video, but someone did a deep dive on the timeline of Emily in Paris.
I thought you were going to say on the deep dive between stock and bra.
No, I also actually loved that one. Can I say people have been doing really interesting stuff on social media lately. Don't disparage.
Sometimes I'm swiping down TikTok and I say, Claire, the reason you're spending so much time on TikTok is because you're waiting to find a TikTok you like. And if you've been swiping for 2 hours, that means you don't even like this app. Why won't you just get off of it?
And then you find a 15-minute video about stock versus broth.
And you're like, no, this is the most education I've ever received.
I thought like over a week ago, and I keep talking about it. So I feel like I have to recommend it. He watched every episode of Emily in Paris, trying to tie it to a calendar, essentially, trying to figure out how long Emily has been in Paris. And with season 5 or even 6 coming out this week, I feel like it's a really important time to catch up and say, how the fuck long has it? Because people say disparagingly to Emily, how does she not know French yet? But she might have actually only been there for like 5 months. Maybe she's cycled through several serious boyfriends. Maybe she hasn't. It's hard to tell because when is the polo match? So that's my second recommendation.
That's why actually network TV is so important because they were tied to a schedule and like you had to have a Thanksgiving episode one week. You had to have a Christmas episode. You had to have a Halloween episode.
Exactly.
These writers need structure just like a freelancer.
Emily needs to get a dog so we know what time we're waking up in the morning.
You know what's the all-time greatest timeline question? My favorite movie, Something Borrowed.
Oh, yeah.
At one point, John Krasinski moves to London and then she goes to visit him to ask a question and leaves that afternoon.
To go to the wedding, like that night.
I was like, she also brings, I think, Shake Shack to London, which there's just no way around it. Shake Shack doesn't sit on a plane.
I feel like the burger could keep, like it wouldn't be your ideal burger, but I can imagine it. I think she brings like a shake as well.
It's just simply not that good.
It's just not good enough to be 9 hours old. My third recommendation is the New York Mag Things We Love About New York issue list. I haven't read the issue yet, but I was reading the list of things they love about New York. And it is just a fun read every year to remind yourself that not everything in the world is a West Village girl. There is just like weird shit happening all the time. People are making cool things and having cool ideas and renovating museums and doing exhibitions and making music. And I think every city has fun things going on. One of my recommendations was going to be local ceramicists. And I wasn't even going to recommend, I mean, on my Instagram, I'll recommend my people in New York. But like go places around you, go to your local ceramic studio around the holidays and say, are you guys doing a show where you're like the people who ceramicize here are selling their ceramics? You and I were talking about our favorite things about New York last week. There just are things happening everywhere for those with eyes to see.
And not to be ableist. Anybody with any kinds of abilities.
That's so true. That's so true. I went the other day to see traditional Irish Christmas music. And I thought that's the thing I love about New York. I love that I can go to an Irish pub where they have a fiddle. What do you love about New York? We were talking the other day just about romanticizing where you live, and we live in a very romantic city. And so I'd like to hear one.
I really love a great busker.
Oh, yeah.
There's just sometimes you hear music and you go, this is some of the best music in the world. And they're just playing for free right now. And my rule of thumb is if you make me look up from my phone, be it busking, be it performance, I will give you money because you've like earned my attention. And I appreciate that you got me out of my phone for about a minute.
One of the great joys of my life is being fist bumped by a Showtime performer while he hangs upside down. It's happened to me a few times. It's always good luck. The people I think I relate to least in this city are the people who think Showtime is a nuisance.
Have you ever done a flagpole? It's like the greatest physical feat there is.
I mean, of course, I've never done a flagpole. You know that I'm made of jelly and sticks.
You'd flop over like a cooked spaghetti.
It's just not possible based on my construction.
You're like a flagpole that like breaks into parts, like how I have a portable hanger rack, like clothing racks. You know when things like pull apart.
Oh yeah, like a tent stick.
Yes.
I'm made of tent supports.
They clip together. They're held together by one internal string so they can pull.
Claire, what are your recommendations?
I saw Sentimental Value on last Friday, and I have to say I loved it. I loved it. I recommend going to see it, and I recommend going to see it at about 4 p.m.
Yeah.
I do think it's a long movie that you kind of have to just like get into the world, and I could see you falling asleep if you're like me, someone who falls asleep often. And I really think like it's wintertime, it's dark anyway. Pick a day that's going to be shitty outside and go just like get into the vibe of the movie and then go to dinner after.
Yeah.
I think that's always a fun thing to do with movies, but especially like a long slow. But I have to say, as far as long slow goes, like I was engaged every scene. Like I found it very good. You guys know I can sometimes roll my eyes at a director who feels no imperative to like entertain you or engage you in any way. Because there's a way to be slow and sad, but still like emotionally important.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I find people miss the mark and just not giving a fuck if you live, like acting like it's not their job to make you care. I do think it's the job of a director to make you care.
That's the main job, I would say.
Anyway, sentimental value, I love it. See it in the afternoon and then go out for like a glass of wine and some stew or some curry or just something like real.
Oh, some stew.
There's this food called pizzoccheri, which is like a northern Italian dish that Mac loves. So we have to always have it like in the summer, even though it is something that you're supposed to have after having like shoveled mountains of snow. There's a certain food that was made for a culture of people that have to like snowshoe to and from work. And I will say when it's like June by the pool and you're like, oh, great.
Can you tell me what it is really quick?
I think it's like a buckwheat pasta with like chunks of potato. It's like imagine you looked at a plate full of gnocchi and said thicker.
Perfect for the pool.
Anyway, recommendation number 2 is start your 2026 Christmas gift list ideas right now. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but if you're somebody who struggles to think of good Christmas gifts ideas for people or Hanukkah gifts or birthday gifts, or if you're somebody who's like, I never know what to get somebody, I can never think of a good idea. One of the ironies of gift giving ideas is that they come up right after you've given someone a gift. Like the time somebody's most likely
it's
to
like
say.
Shopping for events when you find the perfect dress the next day.
Like, but truly, there's something about like everyone's giving stuff and like there's so many ideas of flutter and somebody's gonna go, oh my God, you know what I would have loved? I guess next year. And listen, on Boxing Day, we don't really celebrate that here, but on Boxing Day, you're gonna hear somebody say, oh my God, you know what I've actually always wanted that I always forget that I want? Because there's something about getting the gifts you don't want that reminds you of what it is that you've always wanted. They're gonna say it. And what you have to do is just write it down in your phone. Get your notes out app, write gift ideas 2026, and just start listing them. And if you start now, by next year, you'll have a good idea for everybody. And then my recommendation 3, kind of the same genre of like planning years in advance. If you are feeling down and out about your 2025 year, you're looking at your resolutions from the beginning of the year, you're thinking about your resolutions for next year, can I recommend looking at what you wanted to get done 2 years ago? Ashley and I and our friend Sophia always do these like end of year resolutions and goals and mantras and like vibes and stuff. And it was funny because this year we were looking at 2025s, like at the beginning of January 2025, and I was going, I didn't get done any of the shit I said I wanted to get done. But by coincidence, I was looking at like 2023, I think. So I guess that's maybe even 3 years ago.
No, we wrote it in 2023 for 2024.
Okay.
That's 2 years ago.
Sure. Anyway, a lot of those I had done.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just takes a little bit longer to get at something. Sometimes you need a year of germinating. So if you're feeling bad about yourself, if you feel you haven't gone too far in life, have you dug deep enough? I bet when you were a little baby, you hoped to one day walk. How are you? I bet, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and I also think sometimes with time and clarity, and I don't even mean this in a cop-out way, but I was looking at some of my goals from 2 years ago, and I was like, oh yeah, it just took a little longer than I thought it would to get those done. And other ones I said, I don't recognize the person who had that goal because I don't want or like that. I think sometimes you look at it and you go, that was an ambitious idea that doesn't resonate with who I am today. And so it's fine that I didn't accomplish it because I've succeeded in a different way by growing and becoming anew.
Exactly. And it's okay to look back and say, I didn't know who I wanted to be. I always joke that like when people say, I do it to make 17-year-old me proud, I go, 17-year-old me was like the dumbest bitch in the world who thought the only thing that mattered was getting 30 under 30 by 22. She would have been so disappointed in my life. And I would have had to look at her and punch her in the face and say, you stupid bitch, you have so much more than you even deserve. And you're disappointed with me? You have no fucking idea how lazy and pathetic and stupid you are. You actually deserve to eat dirt off the ground.
And yet I've turned it into something very cool.
If you don't recognize that I have quite a nice little life, I'm not going to finish this sentence, but it's something mean. Anyway, Ashley, what are we talking about this week?
Okay, we've got some really fun stuff on the list today. We are talking about the Grinch. Yes, the one who stole Christmas.
Controversial.
Yeah, he stole it.
Or is he not the hero we want, but the hero we deserve?
Since then, his heart's grown 3 sizes, so...
But how'd that happen, one might ask? Well, luckily, there's a 6-hour Jim Carrey movie full of hell to tell you about it. Vulture did an incredible oral history of Ron Howard and Jim Carrey's The Grinch, and it was a fascinating retelling of how that movie came to be. So we're going to get into that stuff.
We are going to be talking about Quentin Tarantino's remarks about Paul Dano.
Spoiler alert, I don't think we're thinking what you're thinking.
I think we're all thinking different things.
And we have a new idea. Paul Dano, yeah, I hate you, you chinless son of a bitch. I'm kidding. I do famously not like that face on a man, but
I have no problem with Paul Dano.
Individually, I have no problem with his mind or his abilities.
We are going to be talking about video podcasts and the way the manosphere broke open and swallowed us all.
Yeah, Ashley has some thinking things to say.
I've got some thoughts.
She's noticed some stuff.
We're going to be talking about aging. Is it true? Does it happen to everyone?
And will it happen to us?
And then we've got a fun little caps off about our good friend, Amy Schumer. Okay, so spoiler alert, the Grinch stole Christmas.
So this article is vulture.com, an oral history of how the Grinch stole Christmas.
Okay, so we all know about how the Grinch stole Christmas. But what you didn't know is that this movie came to life via mostly practical effects, prosthetics, and like a hope, a dream, a wish, and a prayer.
Have you ever seen this version of the Grinch?
Yes. Have you not seen Jim Carrey's The Grinch?
I don't think so, no.
What the fuck are you talking about right now?
I think I've seen stills of it. I've seen imagery from it. I know I could pick it out of a lineup. But I think, much like many of the critics who went to go see it, I was of the feeling that The Grinch is something sacred, religious almost, and you don't mess with the text outside of the original 30-minute cartoon.
Interesting to me. Okay, I mean, I find this to be one of the more impressive feats of film that I've ever seen. I grew up on it.
But like, did you grow up on the original The Grinch?
Yeah, of course I've seen the original The Grinch. I've seen, obviously, like Peanuts, A Very Charlie Brown Christmas, The Grinch, important to me. You know, those are all things I watched, I learned, I discovered myself via. But the Jim Carrey Grinch was a huge part of the holiday season for me.
I've never seen it. I think I should watch it for the Patreon this week.
Yeah, absolutely you should. I thought you just wanted to like rewatch it for the Patreon this week. I had no idea you actually haven't seen it.
No, I haven't seen it. But okay, so here's the story of how it came to be. In the late 90s, the rights to How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss, which was written in the 50s, were up for grabs. But Dr. Seuss's widow,
to me, they're still married. Death does not separate us.
Audrey Geisel, was like very protective of the rights. And she literally said, we're not just going to sell it. We're going to create an auction where you have to audition for it. So basically, you had to sit down one-on-one with Audrey and pitch your idea of how to do it. And she was just straight up like, I don't like some of you people. And Brian Grazer,
he was a producer with Universal, and he sat down with her. And then,
but he was like, also Ron Howard's longtime producer. He had produced Splash and all those other movies.
So he sits down with Audrey, and Ron Howard is not attached at this moment. He sits down with her, and she's like, nope. And then he calls his friend and is like, you got to get me back in there. I have a new idea.
And they're like, no, you get one chance to pitch to Mrs. Dr. Seuss. He goes, well, Ron Howard hasn't pitched. What if Ron Howard pitches as the director my idea that I'd get to produce? Because Ron Howard would let me produce his movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Ron Howard specifically goes, well, I don't want to direct it. I'm busy right now. And he goes, that's fine. We'll like figure it out later. But you have to go in there and you have to sell her as you as the director on this movie. Then give me the rights to produce it. And then I'll just find somebody else.
So they sit down with her.
And it really was actually Ron Howard's wife, Cheryl, who said on a plane, the story is all about commercialism. And if Whoville has just gotten so ridiculous, maybe Cindy Lou could have an attitude about that. So in a way, it could be an affirmation story for her and a lesson for all the Whos.
It's hard for me almost to even separate what was in the original 30-minute special now from the movie, because the movie is about like forgetting the meaning of Christmas and letting commercialism take the wheel, which some would say has happened again.
Well, I do think the original, I guess I know because it's all I know. The original is this idea that like the Grinch was the one who misunderstood that the presents were the point of Christmas. He thought he could steal Christmas. But then when he heard that the Whos woke up the next day and had a big, beautiful supper together and kept singing anyway, he realized that he had made a mistake about what this holiday was to them. And he was moved by them. But so in the new Grinch,
it's kind of the same, but they also are caught up in the commercialism of Christmas. But then they wake up after Christmas has been stolen and like recenter on the real meaning of Christmas. Like he's not trying to teach them the real meaning of Christmas. They all are like, Christmas is about presents. But then they have no presents and they go, we're going to celebrate anyway. And he was like, oh, shit. And they all kind of learn.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, he's like basically we came up with this third act about the alienation
Yeah.
of the Grinch and how he feels so alienated. Something very interesting was Audrey, the widow, wanted Jack Nicholson to play the Grinch, which is one of the most old bitch shit I've ever. I love the idea of being like in 30 years. I know, what's a classic?
Glenn Powell.
No, I was going to say Harry Styles. Somebody that's like way inappropriate. Make Harry Styles play the little boy. The funny thing about Jack Nicholson to me is he's just the wrong size to play the Grinch. He looks more like the Mucinex booger. He is like a squat. He does not have the length.
Yeah. No, he doesn't have the limbs.
He also doesn't have the silliness.
Well, exactly. So that is something that is so interesting about this adaptation of The Grinch. It is serious. Like, it is a serious story of rejection and like rage. But he's also silly. And I think some of the choices that Jim Carrey made as the Grinch are so fascinating. Jim Carrey says, I ended up gritting my teeth to the point of cracking them. He's a character with a heart-withering sense of abandonment and alienation that has infiltrated his entire being. He resents anyone who has joy in their life. I physicalized his arrested development into this depiction of a 7-year-old who's having a tantrum stomping off to his room.
I mean, when the minute he said that, I was like, oh, that's exactly what you are.
Yeah.
Someone having a tantrum and like refusing to engage in the solution of your own problem, which is what a 7-year-old child does.
I also love this line. Okay, so Ron Howard gets the pitch. He says, I think Jim Carrey might be the guy. At that moment, Ron Howard was working with Jim Carrey on Liar Liar and pitched to him The Grinch. And Jim Carrey went and sat down with them and just like started doing the face and the voice. He said the voice came from the interior.
Yeah, she pitched it for Audrey, like the widow.
Yeah.
I have to laugh though, because this was at a point when Jim Carrey was trying to move into more serious films. And Ron Howard's next film was A Beautiful Mind. Jim very much wanted to do A Beautiful Mind, a movie with drama and gravitas, but I had already pursued Russell Crowe and I didn't want to tell him. So I'd always veer back to the Grinch. I'd go, no, you're so much better for this. This would be great. I just think it's so funny to be like, A Beautiful Mind, the movie that won an Oscar? No. Have you even considered the Grinch?
Think about the Grinch every now and then. Jim had such an immediate sense of how to bridge the tone between comedy, pathos, and the edge and rage that the Grinch brings to the piece. And that is so true. It is so funny, but he's so mad, but it walks such a fine line.
So one of the big stories that came out of here was like the hell that was dressing up as the Grinch. And something that kills me is they call it his costume, his body wig. They go, it was essentially a body wig, which
yak hair.
And I say two words that really, when they come together, like make me nauseous.
I mean, everyone was wearing such absurd layers. I didn't even really realize how much body shaping was done to the Who's. Obviously the Grinch I knew, but every single one of them, yeah.
But something very interesting is, so they wrote the story, they had 2 writers write it, and then they brought in 3 former Seinfeld writers to do punch-ups, and they essentially changed the whole script. And they said one of the things they did was they taped up the Grinch's cave on an empty stage. We went through and did his scenes and improvised with him and added to the script what was already rewritten. So basically the idea was that when he was in his costume, he was so claustrophobic and he couldn't breathe, he couldn't move, he couldn't see.
So they were like, he can't improv once we get him into the suit, so let's act it out and see what emerges. So that once he's in the suit, we can have this like tight, perfect comedy.
And they said once it was improv'd out, like Jim Carrey is such a serious and intense professional that he was like, to a second, it was choreographed. He was very someone who always found the camera. He's like, I'm going up 6 stairs. I'm saying this word. I'm going 1 stair up. I'm turning around at this stair. Like, it was very intense.
The 3 writers who were hired to like work out the dialogue actually didn't get writing credit on the movie because it was a punch up and like a rewrite. And I guess it came down to arbitration with the WGA, which is where a couple people sit down and kind of judge the scenario to decide who gets writing credit. And the person who was the tipping point just kind of had a personal rule that rewrites never get credit. And so these guys do not have credit on the writing of the movie. But he said that like Jim Carrey, Ron Howard, everyone who was involved with the movie is so aware of how much they did and finds the WGA's decision unfair.
But they don't get residuals.
Like they don't get residuals, but they do get credit in vulture.com.
Yeah. So they come up with this intense costume for him, which as Ashley said, he's wearing like a full body suit basically. And then he wears this foam rubber cutout. And then on top of that, he wears another latex body wig, which is covered in yak hair, which is incredibly itchy. He says he couldn't actually scratch anything, though, because he had these 12-inch long fingers, so he couldn't scratch any of the itches. He had his nose taped up to the top of his nose, and he couldn't breathe through it, so he had to mouth breathe. And then on top of that, he had these green contacts that he could only see like little pinholes through, so he could only see exactly in front of him. And apparently when he first did it, the producers or the studio was like, this is fucking insane. No. So the makeup artist secretly sent a video of the two versions of Jim Carrey to this guy with a blog called Ain't It Cool News, who like was a fan of the makeup artist's work. And he said, listen, Universal wants to paint Jim Carrey green. I feel it's a major mistake. I did a test on myself. What do you think? Can you somehow say that you saw this test and that Universal is making a major mistake and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about? And he did. And it was outrageous responses from everybody. What the hell is wrong with these people at Universal? I don't want to see Jim Carrey. I want to see the Grinch, blah, blah, blah. And they finally caved.
Because the studio kept saying, we're paying Jim Carrey $20 million. What do you mean you're going to make him unrecognizable? And they just wanted him green. And Jim Carrey was pissed
funny,
off.
as if they're going to be like, the idea that somebody would watch that movie and go, is that a up-and-coming actor? Sir Grinch?
I think this line is so funny. I don't want to be one of the cast members of Cats. I want to be the Grinch.
Yeah, but Jim Carrey fought for all this shit. And then, of course, he ended up having a mental breakdown because of it.
I guess the thing is, if he had fought this hard to have this crazy Grinch costume and then was like, this just is what I have to do, that's one thing. I guess almost every day on set, he would have a full conniption about...
Well, the first day, he said he was going to quit, that he wanted to give all of his money back and he'd pay it back with interest.
So then they ended up hiring a military torture expert.
He trained the military on enduring imprisonment and torture.
So they hire him to sit down with Jim Carrey and give him tricks for how to like mentally detach from a torturous physical experience, like punching yourself in the leg.
Or finding a friend that you trust and punching him in the arm. Eat everything in sight. Change patterns in the room. If there's a TV on when you start to spiral, turn it off and turn on the radio. Smoke cigarettes as much as possible.
And this is actually the man who ended up founding SEAL Team 6.
Yeah.
But a lot of this stuff is what Jim Carrey insisted upon, especially the contacts. So they said, we can make your eyes green in post. And Jim Carrey was like, no, I need the green contacts. And I get artistically,
because Ron Howard keeps saying if this movie was made even 4 years later, we never would have done this shit. But CGI was so bad in the year that we filmed, 2000, that it like would have looked like ass.
Yeah. And so they didn't use any CGI, but Jim Carrey was like hellacious to work with because he was so miserable in the contacts. Mm-hmm. Apparently his eyes were just like burning in pain. And he was like, it's something that you don't just leave behind at set. I was just miserable for weeks and weeks. And he spent 92 days in costume.
The craziest thing is at one point they had to give him this concession of changing his filming schedule because they said more than even a mental problem, it was also a health problem where his skin actually couldn't handle being painted for 5 days in a row. So they would give him Wednesdays off to just like read lines from off screen because like he was going to die. Do you remember there was an urban legend
about Jim Carrey?
No, but about a girl on a record who was painted all gold. And they claimed that because you breathe through your pores and she was fully painted gold, that she died. She like suffocated to death. And then there was like one of those urban legends that if you listen to the song, you can hear her screaming in the background because she was dying. And in 4th grade, that made a lot of sense.
I never heard that, but I do think that that's how the Tin Man from the original Wizard of Oz died. I think that there was like a lot of paint allergy in Hollywood in the early days that like poisoned people.
Yeah. The thing that makes sense to me now is that they definitely wouldn't have been shooting the cover for the CD in like another room while recording.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, this is where he talks about the bodysuits that everybody was wearing. The poor Who's, I mean, I never got complaints from them, mind you. They didn't have to wear the hairy suit, but they had basically the same padding that Jim had. It's foam latex, a material that's been used in film since 1939. The Wizard of Oz, speaking of, used the foam latex. It's basically a sap of rubber tree with zinc and sulfur added and soap added, and you whip air into it. The more air you whip into it, the softer and more flexible it is. And you inject into a mold, and you have to bake it for 8 hours. And that was very difficult because we had 90 Who's. And every day it's a once use and throw away. So we had to make so many sets of appliances. And after you bake it for 8 hours and remove it from the mold, not everyone works. I used to figure 1 in 5 success rate because you might get a bubble or something. We made literally thousands of appliances for this film, all foam latex.
Appliances, that's like face apparatuses and stuff?
I think that's the body one.
That's so crazy that those are not reusable.
Ron Howard says this is like the only film he's ever made that went over budget. They brought in like a Cirque du Soleil guy at one point. They just had this trampoline room. And I guess because I've never seen the movie, I was like, what are you talking about? What does this have to do with the Grinch?
Oh my God, you're going to love it.
There's Cirque du Soleil in there?
I mean, the Who's are so whimsical.
Got it. Anyway, I guess there's some talk of making a part 2, but they don't know. Were there any other parts of this story that really stuck out to you?
I mean, it was really interesting hearing from Taylor Momsen, who
I
has
forgot that
really come to embrace her days of Cindy Lou Who. I really love Taylor Momsen, man. I think the way that she kind of like went out to be like, fuck that shiny, cutie little cutie patootie thing I was doing. And now she's come full circle to be like, I'm a rock star who was a shiny cutie patootie.
Yeah. She did What's the Meaning of Christmas but rock style?
Where Are You Christmas?
Where Are You Christmas but rock style? She also says Jim Carrey was like incredibly protective of her on set. And everybody said he's very protective of children.
Mm-hmm.
Like before he was going to curse because something was hurting his eye, he'd be like, get your daughters out of here.
That's a good Grinch voice. And apparently at one point she almost fell out of a sled and he freaked out.
But they didn't see each other again for years until they were both at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was like introducing the band and she was performing with them.
That's so cute. What I wouldn't give to be there. I found it so interesting that the Who city was inspired by Gaudi architecture,
Yes.
which we went on a Gaudi architecture tour when we were in Spain this year.
I also found that interesting.
Because I really, as soon as they said that, I was like, oh,
Of course.
duh, gorgeous.
How do you create these whimsical but structurally competent buildings?
And finally, they talk a little bit about the reviews of it and how a lot of them avoided kind of the reception because at the end of the day, this is just a wildly successful film. Like,
They
who
said it
cares
was like
what
one of the biggest
say?
box office movies for either Jim Carrey or Ron Howard. And of course, to this day, those residuals still hit.
I mean, it's being re-released for its anniversary right now, and it did become a Christmas classic to me.
That's no Fred Claus.
To me, at least. And what I think is so true, which I think comes off as kind of a flippant statement here. I don't think he's being flippant, but I think it's printed as something as like kind of an offhand statement. I was disappointed because there's no denying that Jim was dazzling. I thought he should have been nominated for an Oscar that year, honest to God. I am like, yes. And I do think as much as we say like, oh, hasn't Hollywood been awarded enough? This comes up every year during awards season, which is award show after award show after award show. I have been thinking a lot about the fact that I do think awards make sense. I don't know, like, why would movies not be competing in that way? But I wish almost that award shows were more distinct genre-wise, because I feel like right now what we have is like the awards season is such a precursor to the Oscars, and you like look at what's winning in the awards season to get to the Oscars. And I almost wish there was just more credit in other ways. I know the Golden Globes has more like comedy categories and stuff like that. But this is an insane performance and like an incredible feat of physical comedy, which you never see getting any credit other than, I guess, monetarily. I mean, but will $20 million keep him warm at night like an Oscar would have?
Yeah, like somebody as silly as Jim Carrey could get credit for like being as brilliant a comedic actor as, say, Meryl Streep.
Yeah, I guess I do wish that there was acknowledgement of the brilliance of
like the way he commits himself so wholly. He's like
acting, because it isn't ever going to win an Oscar, and I know that. But I wish that we acknowledged it was incredible.
Speaking of, you know what that makes me think of?
What?
Have you seen the Golden Globes are doing podcasts?
Yeah, I have.
How do you feel about that?
You know, I think it makes sense for the Golden Globes to give us an award. I don't think it's a bad step. I think it should be legitimized as a medium of art. I guess out of all the things, if we're just going to give the most commercial version of it an award, we're going to do podcasts.
That's exactly how I feel. Like at its best, I think the idea of these artistic merit-based awards is to like compete with the commercial nature of film, which is that it's a very expensive medium. And therefore, like it has to make money. And so you reward the ones that make money. But then like there has to be an element of understanding and appreciating the artistic merits of film that maybe, you know, don't hit the box office. And it's not always that way, but I think that that's the idea of these awards, and this idea that to be, listen, I didn't think we were, I'm not saying us, but I am saying.
I also don't even think we're a particularly innovative podcast, but I think there are people who are extremely interesting with this medium.
Yes, and are doing amazing work, amazing journalistic work, and like incredibly funny stuff. But anyway, the idea that the contenders are the most commercially successful podcasts isn't the win the win? Like,
Yeah.
I just don't know what's different than this is such a metric-based medium that the idea that you're using the metrics to dole out the awards, I go, there's already awards. It's called being number 1, being number 2, being number 3.
Yeah, like we have a chart that we see every week. And so to just say like, well, we looked at the chart and this is who's best, like, oh, great work awarding.
Good noticing. You're right. You noticed really good that Mel Robbins has a big famous podcast.
Yeah, I guess I think that there is a really interesting, first of all, I think to lump all podcasts into one category is ultimately like preposterous. But I think that if they were to separate like interview podcasts, scripted podcasts, I think people are doing really interesting stuff. I've heard really good things about Amy Poehler's podcast. I think every single person on that list is mostly just doing something not at all interesting or innovative or anything.
Yeah.
Other than just like
what's good about Amy Poehler's podcast besides Amy Poehler?
Yeah.
I don't even know if this is the best of Amy Poehler.
Exactly.
The best thing she ever did was be that little girl with that Uncle Rick. Anyway, final thoughts on the Grink.
Love him. Love him. Love his work. Can't wait to see you see it.
And we'll be back on the Patreon this week with a full review of Jim Carrey's The Grinch.
I would love to talk to Bug about her feelings about The Grinch, which are extremely complicated.
Well, they were friends in school when they were both young.
Yeah.
And then they went separate ways. And she's always had a hard time with the idea that like somebody with a heart of gold that's 2 sizes too small should get famous, and it wasn't her.
Well, she was planning to steal Christmas the very next day.
She didn't know there was a specific date. She thought it was like Thanksgiving, just kind of like randomly in the month of December at the end.
Yeah.
She thought there'd be a parade first that would tip her off that it was coming soon.
Right.
Also, on the Patreon, I was so excited. I was going to review The Family Stone, and then somebody pointed out to me that we actually have already done that. And then I said, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll review The Holiday. And then somebody said, yeah, you guys did that too.
Oh, much like the world's most famous podcasters, we are bitches with no new ideas.
When I found out that we'd even done The Holiday, I went, well, should we quit? I don't know. What's left? I really am like, if this podcast isn't gearing up to do another Family Stone review, then why do it at all? That being said, I am a longtime Love Actually hater, and it turns out Ashley,
a longtime Love Actually lover.
So we will also be doing a Love Actually review on the pod, if not this week, next week.
Oh my God, I'm stressed about it.
And the pod is the Patreon.
I'm stressed to disagree because I'm like, right.
People can have different. I'm not mad at you for liking it.
No, people have different opinions. I just don't know that I can like particularly defend my stance. I just disagree with everyone in the world.
Everybody likes it. It's like one of the most famous Christmas movies.
No, everyone loves
it.
You
sound like a Taylor Swift. You sound like a Swiftie right now, being like, it's literally like the most beloved Christmas movie.
It is not beloved. It's like the whole internet.
It has nothing to do with love, actually. I've watched it and gone, not one of these people
Claire,
is in love.
literally, if you open your eyes, love is actually all around.
You're not in love with your housekeeper that doesn't speak the same language as you. That's abuse. Okay, sorry, moving on.
Also, I just want to update really quick that the Wizard of Oz Tin Man did not die in the movie, but he suffered severe near-death toxicity from the paint.
I had a feeling he didn't die because I saw him at the end of the movie. I said, I don't think they had enough foresight to film
the opposite of died. He lived extra. He got a heart.
Support for this show comes from Estee Lauder.
What do you wear during the winter months? Do you reach for deep, earthy tones that kind of like make you feel the warmth? Or do you become one with the short, dark days and go a bit darker with your makeup?
Well, you know what I like to do? I like to take note of the birds, and I like large pops of color in an otherwise cold and desolate environment. The cold, desolate environment, the rest of my face. The pops of color, a bright red lip, a beautiful blue eyeshadow. I like to be like a blue jay, a cardinal.
How beautiful. I love to add a little bit of sparkle, like I'm a fresh blanket of snow.
Oh.
A blush like I'm Frosty the Snowman.
Yeah, like you're in from the cold. But the reality of the situation, I haven't left my house all day.
I'm never going out in the cold.
When you come see me, I'm going to make you think I was just sledding and I'm naturally rouged like a young child. But actually, I'm 92 episodes deep in garbage that I can't even remember. But you would never know from my makeup.
But really, when we step into this holiday season, it's the season for layering up. And that starts with your foundation. Specifically, Estee Lauder's iconic Double Wear Foundation.
Which is made to stay in place, just like me this winter.
It has 24-hour color true wear plus oil control. And it's lightweight and buildable with a natural matte finish.
It can keep those winter looks looking perfect without any touch-up. Plus, it comes in 55 shades that flatter all skin tones. You're going to find your perfect match.
Shop now at EsteLauder.com. Support for Good Noticings is brought to you by Starbucks.
With Starbucks, every little sip makes the holidays more magical.
My favorite holiday beverage since the first time I took a sip of it tepidly years ago, I said, oh, I'm overcome with holiday spirit and joy. It's the peppermint mocha.
I love the caramel brulee latte. I actually introduced my husband to eggnog and at home for Christmas. And it was the first time he'd ever have it. And he loved it so much. And then the next day he was like, you'll never believe what they have at Starbucks, an eggnog latte. And so we love to go get a little eggnog latte together. Kind of our Christmas tradition.
Come together over your holiday favorites at Starbucks. Let's talk about QT, the little cutie pie, Quentin Tarantino.
My feet are out. The dogs are barking. So Quentin Tarantino, what did you call him?
QT?
No, off mic. Maybe like a famous kook.
Notorious wackadoo. Quentin Tarantino has made the news for going on a podcast. Oh, when will the podcast stop?
Bret Easton Ellis's podcast called The Bret Easton Ellis Podcast.
Oh, creative. Should have been nominated for an award.
I mean, with the numbers from this news, maybe it will next year.
So he went on the Bret Easton Ellis podcast and they were talking about favorite movies. Quentin Tarantino was saying he loves the movie There Will Be Blood. However, he thinks Paul Dano's performance sucked dick.
Mm-hmm. It would stand a better chance to be number one or number two if it didn't have a big giant flaw in it. And the flaw is Paul Dano. Obviously, it's supposed to be a two-hander. And it's also so drastically obvious that it's not a two-hander. He is weak sauce, man. He's a weak sister. Austin Butler would have been wonderful in that role. I don't think Austin Butler was born.
Yeah.
I don't think Austin Butler was really viable. When Bret Easton Ellis is trying to be reasonable and PC, politically correct, you're really fucked, but he goes, well, maybe you think Dano was just the wrong actor. And he goes, no, he's just such a weak, uninteresting guy. Daniel Day-Lewis shows that he doesn't need a strong foil in the movie. He doesn't need anything. There would have been more stringiness to the beef. And again, it's supposed to be a two-hander, and it's not. When Ellis contended that Day-Lewis's performance in the movie is so gargantuan that it perhaps overshadowed Dano's, Tarantino responded, you put him with the weakest male actor in SAG, the limpest dick in the world. I'm not saying he's giving a terrible performance. I'm saying he's giving a non-entity performance. I don't care for him. I don't care for Owen Wilson, and I don't care for Matthew Lillard. I blame a lot of what's happened on Bret Easton Ellis trying to find a middle ground. Sometimes somebody says, I don't like something, and you have to let it lie. He wouldn't have been called the biggest limp dick in the world if Bret hadn't tried to go, maybe I could explain what's happening to you in a more diplomatic way.
Okay, and here is where what I'm about to say is going to become unpopular.
But I think that's why we should be nominated for a Golden Globe.
We're taking risks. Okay, I think Quentin Tarantino is a notorious kook, a bitch, a self-important...
foot-loving racist.
A self-important, foot-loving racist, exactly. And I think something that sometimes happens in the age of the internet is people will hear something, an opinion from someone that is notoriously not the head opinion giver. I don't know. What other things are we saying there has to be a decision made? We all have to come to a consensus. The one person who we can trust to offer that universal consensus is Quentin Tarantino. That's never happened. So the idea that if he says something crazy, everyone has to step forward and personally disavow his statement in order to stand in solidarity with Paul Dano. No one cares. Not even no one cares. I just mean no one is looking to him to be the level-headed opinion giver of our time. He is a filmmaker. He's made some really good films. That doesn't mean that
I just saw Kill Bill.
I love Kill Bill. I just think the way people act, if someone says something negative about someone or something, that person needs to be punished as if they've stabbed them in the neck. He didn't. I'm sorry. If I was Paul Dano, this statement would have really hurt my feelings. Even if I was Matthew Lillard or Owen Wilson, I think I would have my feelings hurt in this situation. That being said, I think for their peers to be disagree, that's nice. But for everyone to be and Quentin Tarantino needs to atone for his great crimes. I don't know, man. He's just a kook with kooky opinions. And this is what's destroying wackadoo opinions, which I think we need in order to have a creative society.
Well, we live in this world where we all beg for creativity. and authenticity, specifically authenticity, we go, where's everybody being honest? And I also have to point out, I don't think Bret Easton Ellis's podcast, like, I think
it's Patreon only. Like, I think it was behind a paywall.
I really think that we have to sometimes take the context not with a grain of salt, with like a
heavy dosing of garlic.
There is a difference between saying something to a friend behind a paywall and going to the Oscars and like making a grand proclamation.
I mean, when Kanye West said this should be Beyonce's award, that's something that kind of was intense.
Yeah, and also, you know what? It turns out he was right because she won the bigger award that night. So if he had just held on to his britches, you would have seen she didn't win some female-only category. I think she won Best Music Video.
Right. People can't even say words on a podcast anymore without it becoming this like national crisis. Everyone is just like looking for outrage. JT Firstman recently did an interview with Vulture where he says that he didn't feel the gay sex and heated rivalry was like authentic gay sex. And obviously I've never had gay sex, so I don't know what is and isn't authentic. But people are acting like he personally went to the head of HBO and said, if you don't take the show off the air, I'll like burn it all down. He didn't. He just like made a statement that was kind of unwelcome in an interview that a lot of people on the internet disagree with. And you have every right to say, I disagree with this. The way that people are like, oh, and JT Firstman is a spokesman for everything. No, he isn't. But like no one is. And not everyone has to agree with everything. You can hear an opinion and say, oh, wildly disagree with that.
I just checked the Quentin Tarantino episode on Bret Easton Ellis's podcast Patreon. It got as many comments and likes as like one of our bigger Patreon episodes.
Yeah.
But his average Patreon episode it seems he has a notably smaller Patreon than we do. So this idea that
Quentin Tarantino didn't come on our podcast to say disparaging comments.
No, I'm just saying at some point it's like, I don't know, did Quentin Tarantino hurt Paul Dano's feelings and come for his career? Or did People and Daily Mail and, do you know what I mean? At some point, it wouldn't have been a headline until you made it a headline.
Yeah.
The first celebrity to speak out was Alec Baldwin, which is important because he's always at the scene of justice.
Yeah, thank God for Alec Baldwin.
It's important to me to enter the audio here.
I just want to say I love Paul Dano. And if you don't love Paul Dano...
And then like Maya Rudolph came out, and so like a lot of people have come out and support.
Ethan Hawke is coming out and support. Like so many people.
It's so funny.
So many people have come out of the closet to say, I for one like Paul Dano. And ultimately, Paul Dano's come out on top. The amount of love for Paul Dano streaming out of the veins of Hollywood is so overwhelming. Has he ever experienced support like this?
Can I tell you? I was going, who the fuck is Paul Dano? And then I go, I've seen all of his movies. I have to say he's forgettable. He's got a face that you forget.
I think you'd remember because it's just not your favorite kind of face.
It's a face I long to forget. Everybody's doing fine. Things couldn't be better for Paul Dano. Every celebrity who's running out of the woodwork to get a little clout to be on the right side of history, of Paul Dano history.
The last line in the Cut article kind of overviewing this drama says, let's all raise a glass to Paul Dano, a guy who's never really been bad and has always minded his own business. That's not really Tarantino's style, which is a shame. Dano would have been quite good in one of his movies. But why would it be Quentin Tarantino's style? I guess that's the thing is, I think that if someone is just like an outspoken Looney Tune.
Yeah, you can't love Golden Hollywood in the old days. You can't be like, I long for a Jack Nicholson and then be like, nobody's allowed to say anything anymore, you know?
Yeah, like this is the kind of thing where I say people aren't allowed to say anything anymore. I do think that we have to take the vessel along with the sauce. Like who said that? What bottle were they in? Do you know what I mean? Was it in Quentin Tarantino? Then maybe it's not just like the most reasonable thing anyone's ever said.
I really like Pulp Fiction. I didn't like Kill Bill as much.
That's so interesting.
I feel I would rewatch Pulp Fiction. I don't feel I need to rewatch Kill Bill.
To each their own.
Yeah. Put that in People magazine. How about this, guys? Why don't you make what I just said a war between me and Quentin Tarantino?
Yeah.
And then maybe him and I can hash it out.
Now, Quentin Tarantino's a funny looking fella.
Oh. Ugly as the day is long. September style. By that, I mean, like, the days aren't so long right now.
Oh.
Like,
June style.
Midnight Sun. Zara Larson style.
Support for this show comes from Cotton.
As the holidays roll around, there's something especially comforting about reaching for your coziest clothes.
The flannel that you reach for every time it gets a little bit chilly outside. Your favorite cozy blanket.
Your corduroy jacket that you love to bust out between November and December.
And your favorite pair of jeans to wear all winter long.
And the thing that all those fabrics have in common is that they're actually made from cotton. Did you know flannel was cotton? Did you know corduroy was cotton?
Yeah, I kind of just assumed everything that I love is cotton.
A safe bet indeed.
I think that it's been quite a trusty belief. My favorite sweaters, I love a good, just like 100% cotton sweater. I'm wearing a cotton cardigan right now.
I'm wearing a cotton sweater right now.
Oh my God, look at us.
I like to wear cotton on cotton, a cotton t-shirt under a cotton sweater.
It's because it's breathable, but then also it keeps you so warm and cozy, and it's just like soft, and it's like a hug, and it's so cold outside, and I'm so sad, but then I'm wearing my comfy sweater, and I feel happy a little.
And I have super sensitive skin.
Yeah.
So I get irritated really badly. I get itchy. A cotton underlayer under anything is going to protect me.
You and Bug, itchy girls. Cotton is the fabric of our lives.
Throughout all of your holiday memories, I bet cotton was right there, keeping you cozy, wrapping you tight. Support for Good Noticings comes from Starbucks.
With every sip, Starbucks makes the holidays feel a little more special.
Enjoy delicious holiday favorites like the peppermint mocha. Did you know that me and my husband actually got together because of a Starbucks at the holidays?
Well, tell the story.
Okay. And I just had a crush on him and he just had a crush on me every single day at work. We would go for like an afternoon coffee and we'd have to bring the whole office so that we pretended we weren't flirting. And then finally, one of the Starbucks employees we were friends with like asked a guy that worked with us, so like, what are those two dating? Because we were always chatting. And then our friend was like, yeah, the guy at Starbucks thought you guys were dating. Isn't that crazy? And we were both like, ha ha ha, crazy. And then finally my husband asked me out on a date. And it was because of the Starbucks employee. So I actually owe my whole marriage to Starbucks.
Come together over your holiday favorites at Starbucks. Speaking of podcasts and the manosphere, there was an article in The New Yorker called Why Video Podcasts Multiplied Beyond the Man Cave by Kyle Chayka, who I believe we've read a few of his pieces before. He writes a lot of media observations.
So Ashley had put it in our Slack channel, which is how we gather headlines. And I read it and I said, I really don't think there's much to say here. And she said, I had a lot of thoughts. So I said, well, save it for the pod, lady.
Okay, so basically,
yeah, why do you want to cover this?
I wanted to cover it because I feel that we are people who've been pressured into video podcasting by the podcast industry.
Well, I feel we've been pressured into talking about the value of video podcasting from journalists trying to prove that this is the momentum. To them, I say, do none of us recall 2016 when Facebook told everybody that the data suggested that everything is switching to video, and entire news organizations slashed their writers to build out a video team, only to then go, sorry, we actually lied about the data, and then all the video people got laid off. Like, we lived through this. It's so weird that these very journalists who were probably laid off on behalf of a fledgling video component are now falling for it again. God, I have to say, sometimes we get a press. They say, oh, can we get a comment? And then they go, we're hearing that you're making a lot of money off of video. Can you talk about why it's so important for you to do video to make all the money you make? And I go, we don't make $1 off of video. And then they go, we're hearing that you do. So could you say that?
This is what I find to be the interesting angle of this story that is completely left out of this story. So this article talks about the way that video podcasting started as sort of a feature of the manosphere. He kind of hypothesizes that video and the connectivity of watching the facial expressions of the interview that you're listening to has led to like a deeper parasocial relationship that's led people from passive listening to active voters, basically. So it talks a lot about the political angle of video podcasting and the fact that, you know, the Adam Friedland show, the Joe Rogan Experience, like a lot of these podcasts that veer political have gained serious traction from video podcasting.
Well, and I think he does rightly say part of the value of video podcasting is that then you have something to pull clips from.
Yeah.
And we've even seen the evidence of this and that there's entire podcasts that don't exist outside of being clip makers. Like, we know people who make clips in the style of a video podcast. And if you wanted to listen to there is no podcast. There's only clips with a microphone.
Yes. And I mean, that's initially why we started filming, is to make clips. We weren't going to put full video episodes out.
Also, there are people who do use YouTube as their primary watching.
Yes.
I think YouTube, I mean, again, who's telling the truth, but YouTube does say 1 billion users use YouTube to watch podcasts, which of course feels like an oxymoron. And therefore, it is the largest podcast app, technically.
Yeah.
Even though it is a video website.
I mean, he talks about Donald Trump's election happening with contribution from video podcasting. And he goes on to sort of say that video podcasting actually might be one of the last vestiges of humanity as the internet becomes AI slop. It is so human to watch someone's facial expression as they're having a long form conversation.
I mean, that's such a funny thing to say because I feel that's very easy to not only duplicate, but like we've already seen deep fakes. If anything, I think the first example we all had with the dangers of AI was watching a deep fake.
Yeah.
Like specifically having somebody say something with a facial expression and you went, I can't believe Obama became a DJ. It's just something I fell for reasonably, but I think isn't beyond the pale and is probably coming soon. Don't you think Obama will DJ a wedding?
Yeah, mine. I want him to play more Passion Pit.
Sleepyhead.
He writes, viewers are reassured to see a voice coming directly from a face and a conversation documented for a stretch of time that would seem difficult to fake. What's unclear is whether the video podcast format can sustain the explosion of entrants as more talking heads in journalism, politics, entertainment, and tech jockey for attention in a digital landscape already being beset by chronic distraction. I guess what I wanted to talk about in general is the way that, first of all, if you are wanting to podcast, everyone thinks everything's oversaturated always. I remember when we started Who's with Tabs in 2018, people said there are already too many podcasts.
Yeah.
And now people say, oh, we're in the middle of this podcast explosion in the last year. Now there's a podcast explosion. Now there's always going to be an explosion of sorts. I think that if you want to create something, not doing it because it feels like there's too many is absurd. There's always been too many, except for when it was just Joe Rogan and Mark Maron, I guess.
Already, actually, to me, too many. That's when I said we need to cut this thing off at the knees.
But it was too late. And then the other thing that I think is so interesting is what you were saying before, the way that the technology that supports podcasts sees more revenue from video. And so they've pushed us into video.
Well, something that we've seen happen is that everybody's always trying to be YouTube. And we've been in this game, I guess, 6-7 years. And I remember early on TikTok, we went to this TikTok event where they sat us down and said, all of the data is suggesting that what people really want from their TikToks are 10-minute videos. They're like, we just added a 10-minute feature. You're going to get more watches if you have way longer videos, blah, blah, blah. And it was so funny because everyone started raising their hands and asking questions. And it was so clear to me that the data was bullshit because they go, watch time proves that you get more watch time when you have a longer video. And I remember running the data. And they're like, if you have a 10-minute video,
it gets 10x minutes than a 1-minute video.
But it really is like, well, yeah, if you have a 30-second video, people have to watch it 20 times. But that's not really true that you're getting more views. And also the algorithm specifically considers watch time. So it's harder to get a good percent of a watch. It just wasn't true. And we've actually watched them fail. I would say that was 5 or 6 years ago. We have watched that TikTok was not able to transition to a current YouTube. I don't think anybody really uses YouTube for long form videos.
Right. Or uses TikTok for long form
Nobody
videos.
uses TikTok. But that's what they were trying to tell us. As I brought up in Facebook a few years ago, tried to say, oh, all the data is showing that you should be doing videos and not text-based stuff.
And it turns out it's because Facebook was creating the infrastructure for a video platform because they wanted to take from YouTube. And so they were convincing all of these media platforms to put more videos on Facebook.
And then most recently, we've seen it with Spotify. Spotify is really incentivizing and then coming up with like lies about why you'll be better off if you have a video on Spotify, even though it does cut into your revenue pretty badly and they can't really figure out how to make it work.
But they only promote and like support podcasts that do put full video on Spotify.
Yeah. I mean, and shout out Spotify.
We love them.
Shout out to our Danny. We love you guys. But but unfortunately, you haven't fooled us because we've seen it time and time again. It reminds me of that N+1 article we were talking about a while ago that was talking about the way that music has to have like a Marxist review of like the culture because art will fit itself into like the commercial vessels that display it. And I think we probably saw that with the record. Like, I don't know what the stats are on that, but I have a feel like A side, B side. I know that like the reason songs are 3.5 minutes is because that's
what fits
on it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's been as true for as long as we've known music, is that like the kind of music that is best suited to the best technology is going to succeed. And then that means everybody else will be making music that probably suits that technology, both because that's what they're hearing the most and also because that's how you disseminate your music. And Bill Discuss said, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but something that we have to consider is that these companies also have an underlying agenda. They can put their finger on the scales. And then what I'm seeing them do is like as we said with Spotify, they're artificially inflating the value of putting a video on Spotify so that everybody does it. And then what they can do is they can go get press to write these articles that says, look at the value of putting video on Spotify. And then that makes somebody who has not yet put their video on Spotify read those reviews and go, oh my God, according to the news,
I have to put my video on Spotify.
And then and it's been actually, now that we talk about it, it's very interesting to see the hegemony of YouTube. They just can't crack that bitch.
They just can't crack that bitch. It's interesting to see an article about the oversaturation of video podcasting when I actually believe video podcasting makes podcasting less saturated because it's a much less affordable and attainable version of podcasting. We always say that if video podcasting had been the norm when we first started a podcast, we would not have been able to do it.
There's a huge difference between having a $100 Zoom recorder, which I know is confusing because of the meeting app Zoom, but like the main standard podcast recorder that I think most podcasters use when they kind of level up.
It's called a Zoom H6 is the one we have.
But yeah, that's $100. You get two $20 mics and then you get a $20 RSS feed. And yeah, it's not free, but I would say as far as the input output goes for what you can make off a podcast, that's a pretty low level barrier to entry.
I mean, you buy it once. The only recurring cost is the RSS feed subscription, which is $20 a month.
You could get all those things used. I'm sure there's a lot of failed podcasters out there who are putting their shit on it.
We bought ours used. And I think that the way that now, in order to create a video podcast, you're either buying expensive cameras outright or you're renting video podcast space, which go for like, I think $2 to hundreds of dollars an hour, like 200 to many hundreds.
A couple to a many. Also, of course, editing. Like I used to spend 20 hours a week editing our podcast when it was audio only. When we added video, it's like a whole new bag of fish.
Yeah.
It's a bag of fish and they're alive.
It's a bag of fish that we couldn't get our hands on.
I guess what you're interested in is the lack of interest in this article.
I'm interested in how much this article is a skim upon the surface of an interesting topic.
The final thing I don't think they've taken into consideration is that I wouldn't say that the visual podcast is necessarily replacing the audio podcast as much as the visual podcast is replacing main media.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look at what Kareem, Amelia, and Hot Ones have done to the celebrity interview. Look at what Adam Friedland has done and Joe Rogan have done to the political interview. Like,
right.
This is our Meet the Nation. And it feels crazy, but it's what we have. Well, thanks for bringing it up. We're interested in hearing your opinions. Shout out about your experiences. Shout out about your experience.
Yeah, shout at us. And finally, we're aging.
So The Cut, as always, had an interesting Emily Gould article recently called Old Young Person. Research shows that aging hits us harder at distinct moments. The first at 44. Elder millennials are headed for the cliff. This article is kind of just a general opus, I guess you would call it, on aging. Emily Gould, if you don't know her, is like a longtime first-person essayist. She kind of was in the top class of them 10, 15 years ago when there was a lot of money to be made. And I got a pixie cut. Here's what it taught me about my mother's feminism. Style writing.
Okay, would read.
No, but I mean, obviously she was the best of them because I think she's stuck around to this day. We've actually talked about Emily Gould articles on this podcast before.
Oh, yeah, we've actually had like a accidental internet beef.
She had this kind of insane article called like How I Learned to Stop Hating Lena Dunham, about how she went to like a psych hospital and felt personally attacked by Lena Dunham. And the weird thing about the article was that looking back, she's still like, yeah, I forgive her for being more successful than me.
And so we talked about it on the Patreon one time, and she like subscribed to our Patreon to hear us talk about it and then say that we didn't like the article. And then she commented on one of our Instagram posts being like, can't believe I just spent $5 to hear you talk shit about me.
And I was like, yeah, I also can't believe that you're a public The Cut writer. Is there not enough shit talked about you on every free corner of the internet? Like, it's so crazy to me to pay to hear it. You couldn't pay me to look at some of the stuff that's written about me. The things I ignore are incredible, and I can't believe she's been in this industry as long as she has. So that's who she is. She's a writer for The Cut. She wrote this article. She's turned 44, and she was kind of panicking about it. Through some life things, she feels that she's no longer as youthful as she has before. She talks generally about how with millennials, because of how hard it is to buy property, the fact that people are having children later and later, if they have children at all, especially in urban areas, and then also with like the red light mask and the advent of Fraxel, we can look younger. We sometimes feel less established in our careers. We don't have this job security. We don't have the financial security that our parents might have had. And I'm a young millennial, but like specifically the boomers, And so there's always been this feeling of like, oh, I'm so young, I'm so young. And she's talking about hitting this kind of 44 cliff. She cites specifically All Fours, which is a Miranda July book that I really liked and Ashley liked less, but we wrote about it in our Substack a year or so ago when we read it, right?
Yes, I definitely think it was very good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it tackled this topic really well.
Anyway, so she does say that apparently, according to studies, there is an actual cliff, and that it does seem through a study of like molecular aging, there is a point in time at 44 and about 60 that all of a sudden your body does change. It's like a small puberty of sorts. And they thought maybe it was just a perimenopause thing, so it affects women specifically, but it turns out it affects men as well. The research seems to confirm something we already sort of knew. There are certain years in your life when aging hits us hard and moves us forward at hyperspeed. 44, according to the study, is the first of those years. 60 is the next, and there may yet be more cliffs to be discovered. The Stanford scientists found these transition points by examining the markers of cellular aging in roughly 100 people between the ages of 25 and 75. Over the course of the study's 12-year duration, they discovered these markers became increasingly dysregulated in bursts around certain ages. At first, they were skeptical that 44 was a true aberration, thinking that perimenopause symptoms might be skewing their results. But when they broke out the data by sex, they found that men were experiencing the same key changes women were: increased risk of cardiovascular disease and a reduced ability to metabolize fat, alcohol, and caffeine. So she's like, okay, so it turns out there are true things. So she starts going on this personal doctor's quest of like, well, what can I do? For example, in All Fours, the woman, the main character, gets progesterone cream, and that really helps her get her body back into her own control. This woman, Emily Gould, gets on Mounjaro, but she doesn't find that helpful. She is forced to reckon with the idea that you do have to start working out and being healthy, like beyond the healthy things. She starts taking an oral estrogen replacement, which some female doctors are saying is actually really important. And if the earlier you can start on those regimens, the better. She said that that had a huge impact on her mental stability. And then she starts going into these like horror stories of people who at 44 who had been healthy and fit and physically great their whole lives, suddenly hip replacements, eyesight gone. Suddenly they're all getting these insane illnesses. And so it did seem that there was a lot of maybe anecdotal evidence to support 44. But then, of course, she interviews some older women who seem to be very happy. And what it seems that they have is like
just kind of like a basic acceptance of and trust in the fact that our bodies do evolve and change. And I think that that is kind of what it comes down to. Like, I think that obviously with science to back it up, it is interesting to find out the ages and dates that you can predict, essentially, that things are going to get a little bit harder. Also, I'm just so interested in the like mental concession of aging. I feel like there is something that is not generationally specific, but gets lumped in a lot with millennials. Like this idea that millennials never quite feel grown up. I bet you could find a lot of 78-year-olds who say, I don't know when I started feeling like I still don't feel grown up. I think that there are a lot of people. What was that article we read about men?
about men.
Maybe it was the What Did Men Do to Deserve This article in the New Yorker that was about this idea that the men who were like building the Empire State Building, those were real men. And the men today are soft men. But then if you look at the journals of the men building the Empire State Building, they felt that they were soft and like the previous generation had been real men. And like there is just this thing that happens always generation to generation where like it is something more timeless than we're willing to admit, that people don't feel the way that they think they're supposed to feel because of societal expectations.
So Emily Gould speaks to some older women about if life gets better and people that are happier now that they're older. She speaks to, for example, Kim France, who was a writer at Sassy Magazine and then
Sassy
founded Lucky Magazine in 2000. France wanted to reassure me that life is better for her now than it was in her 40s or 50s. Part of the reason, she said, is that she no longer feels like an old person trying to be young. She'd crossed over, she said, to being a young old person. I'm in the freshman class. More profoundly, she told me, a great equalizing has taken place. Most of her contemporaries have experienced life's harshest realities. If you get to my age, she said, pretty much everyone has kind of walked through the fiery valley at least once. Something terrible has happened to them, something traumatic, something they can't get over. And when you're 44, that's not true. There's something to being an age where you've come out the other end of all that drama that gets stirred up in your 40s. She also talks to like an older yoga teacher who says that like the older she got, she accepts how complex and difficult it is to being a human being in this world. But on the other hand, if I stay focused on that which I feel is worthy of my attention, I am content. And then finally, a young novelist, a specifically 72-year-old novelist who runs a memoir workshop, She says there's like this incredible end of the tunnel where like you raise your children and there's so much energy being given to them. I gave myself over to my children. I did my career with whatever was left of me after taking care of everyone else, which I think was a story for a lot of women. And now you have to look around and say, well, now who am I? What do I want? She said she knew her vigor wouldn't last forever. Obviously, something's going to get me, but until it does, I'm going to keep going. So it ends with this kind of hope that, it sucks to be faced with these moments of change and mortality and physical loss, but there is another side, and then you adjust, and then you have to just keep persevering and finding excitement and finding the things you love and focusing on them.
Yeah, I think that there's just a lot of interesting discussion around aging that's kind of brushed upon in this article. She talks to a doctor who's doing a study on kind of
the cliffs. He's one of the people who's in this aging cliff thing, and he actually is studying his own cells. And he says
he doesn't believe aging cliffs are an immutable fact of biology. The changes he and his team documented, he said, are a representation of what currently is, not what might potentially be. And I think there is this important balance that I think is worth finding in the not necessarily staving off of aging, but the physical health and physical and mental improvements. Because I think that there is right now, obviously, online, a chasing of visible youth, right? Everyone is looking to not age by looking unaged. Whereas there's also this balance of feeling unaged by making sure, Emily discusses in this article the recommendations of strength training, eating healthy, don't smoke, and she calls it boring. And I think there's this forever push and pull of the stay in self-care versus the live your life large self-care, because I think both things are self-care, and I think everything is always the seesaw of you don't want to shut yourself down to experience, but experience doesn't mean getting blackout drunk and dying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's interesting. He says maybe knowing that at 44, suddenly the workout regimen that's always worked for you might not work anymore and you have to switch it up is helpful. It's just helpful to have that information.
And then on the other side of what he says about just knowing what's happening, something I find is there are kind of these cliffs that hit everyone similarly. But I found as I've gotten older and this feeling of what you're supposed to be like when you're older, I feel that some people respond to that in a way that I find deeply frustrating, in the way that they're pushing themselves towards these cliffs before they physically even arrived. I remember being in my late 20s and the way that people would say oh, wow, I can't go out to dinner on a weeknight. I have to go to bed because I'm in my late 20s now. And I just kind of was if you don't want to go, you don't have to go. If you think you can't go because being 27 means you can't have fun, that created a bigger, what's it called?
Rift.
Schism in my friendships than anything else is the ways that we've all approached aging and the way that I don't feel that being in my, at this point, almost mid-30s holds me back from doing what I want to do. Whereas other people will just say they can't because they'll be well, I'm 34, so those are just things I don't do.
We had a friend for her birthday. She went to
a club.
The club, a rave type club. And somebody she worked with went, how old are you turning? And she was our friend whose birthday it was, she was you don't even understand the disgust and the rage that filled with me at that moment of how fucking dare you tell me I'm not allowed to enjoy my birthday how I want. The joy of getting older is knowing exactly what you want to do on your birthday because you know what you like.
You know what you like. You know what's fun. You know who you want to come. And I think that there is something to younger people thinking that they have to live out their fun in a certain amount of time and thinking that there is a deadline for it. And then feeling, oh, I'm a little bit older now, so I need to schedule my time a bit more wisely because it takes longer to recover from these things that I still want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something I did take away from our many, many memoirs, specifically the older women who I found more interesting, is just how long life is and that you can't ever give up fighting for your personal happiness because it's never going to be taken over by somebody else. It's always your responsibility to make sure you're happy. I always laugh my grandma would never get new hearing aids because she'd be well, I'm going to die soon. And then she lived 15 more years.
Not hearing a damn peep.
That's a really long time to go not hearing things. And the same goes for the 24-year-olds who write to us every month on Worm to the Wise on our Patreon. And they're I'm 24. I have a job and a boyfriend. I don't like either of them, but I think it's too late to make a change. Is it too late? No. You haven't even started.
Yeah. And I think people hold themselves to these deadlines that aren't true and then also fear the deadlines that are true. And this Emily Gould piece did make me sign up for a yoga class near my house because there are deadlines that are true that I think you can prepare yourself for. I know that I don't move my body right. Like, I know that doing yoga will make me a physically happier person.
Well, I think that comes down to the like, it's always your responsibility to like push yourself to being fulfilled and happy. You will not be happy if you allow your body to get so injured because you never took care of it that you can't move and walk bug and like go for runs and stuff.
Right.
Part of your responsibility to yourself is keeping a body that's like capable of doing the things.
Exactly. And I know that those are things that I don't do well enough. And if I can just like force myself to get into the habit now, I think I'll be much happier later on.
But at the same time, this idea that you should give your life over so much to like yoga and wellness and self-care that you don't ever get to hang out with your friends or go out dancing all night or like have a French fry from McDonald's. That's like not the goal of your life. Like the goal of your life is to figure out a way to enjoy all those things while maximizing the next morning.
Can she have it all?
Yeah.
No, I know, exactly. And so I said, I'll take a yoga class.
I think that's great.
And then I'm going to my bar Secret Santa.
So I just thought this was a really fun article that Ashley found on Substack. It's called Aging Out of Fucks, The Neuroscience of Why You Suddenly Can't Pretend Anymore. It's by Ellen Scher, but I feel like it primarily cites this book, The Female Brain, by Dr. Luann Brizendine, a neuropsychiatrist and author.
I love the name Luann Brizendine.
And basically she's like, if you are at a point in your 40s where suddenly you can't filter it anymore and you're done people pleasing and you're in your meeting where normally somebody would be wrong and you'd be like, well, maybe. And so you're just like, yeah, that's not correct. And you don't know why you suddenly feel like such a bitch. It's not you. It's the truth. For decades, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function, social behavior, and impulse control, has been working overtime. It's been monitoring social cues, calculating risks, suppressing authentic responses, and managing everyone else's emotional experience. This is exhausting work and, as it turns out, unsustainable. Research in neuroscience shows that as we age, the brain undergoes a process called synaptic pruning. Neural pathways that aren't essential get trimmed away. Your brain is essentially Marie Kondoing itself, keeping what serves you and discarding what doesn't. And she said this comes from like a hormonal thing. So basically, like it happens to women specifically because of estrogen oxytocin, which like determines most of our hormonal makeup in our early life and up through our fertile years. That really forces you to care more about people and social harmony and being a caregiver. And then, you know, as you go into perimenopause and beyond, you have fewer of those hormones. And so your brain shifts a little bit. As estrogen declines, so does its moderating effect on emotional response and social bonding behaviors. You're not becoming hormonal in the dismissive sense. You're becoming less chemically compelled to prioritize other people's comfort over your own truth. Again, your prefrontal cortex changes, your stress response, like part of the anxiety of living your whole life, worried about being a people pleaser, like your brain just can't fucking do it anymore. It's dysregulated, and then it kind of just shuts down the filter.
And then you're allowed to be just like,
yeah,
a suavecito old lady who just says stuff.
Yeah, they're like also just like the cognitive prioritization shifts. Your brain starts prioritizing differently. Energy is precious. Time becomes finite. The cost-benefit analysis of pretending shifts dramatically.
I mean, think of the way we like revere older women who just tell it like it is.
But also that same archetype is often called like a crabby old lady, like that bitch. You know what I mean? Like that
That's
is
so
such
true.
a type, like the old lady who's such a curmudgeon and a hag and a bitch.
It feels exciting, I feel, to have this written out because I am like, you can view it as a craggly old bitch, or you can view it as someone who has seen the world and who's seen things and now isn't going to beat around the bush. They're just going to say it.
Which is helpful for everyone. And I mean, the rest of this Substack really goes on to be like, if you feel you're going through this phase, don't beat yourself up. People probably are going to beat you up. Like, people who are used to being a people pleaser are going to be frustrated that suddenly they're not being coddled, but you can't let them and their like judgment of your new behavior determine who you are, because like, why shouldn't you get to say the truth? Why shouldn't you get to cut to the chase?
In fact, you could have been doing it longer.
Yeah. And so like, let this be a good pruning in your life. Like the people who are mad when you speak your truth, they're not real. They're not real ones.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting. I actually just read Caro Burke's Yesteryear, which will be out in April. And I think that one of the biggest takeaways in that book is like the danger of women not being honest with each other.
Yeah.
Of people pleasing in a way where actually name how many people you've pleased. And I do think overall as a society, I'm so fucking sick of the way that people pretend things that nobody is benefiting from the pretend of.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the way that like people who talk about politics are difficult, the way that all these conversations are viewed as like difficult and annoying and whatever, I think that the freedom from them, I'm like, if I have to age to get there, then I guess count my years.
Yeah, I just feel like there's something to look forward to. If you're scared about the 44-year-old cutoff, what comes with it too is not caring so much. And it's true and it's coming and it's chemical and it's real and it's freedom.
Yahoo! Are you ready to tip our caps this week?
Yes. Oh my God. This week for our caps off, we have a podcast favorite, former memoirist, former darling of comedy,
Amy Schumer.
Please, please, please read the caption.
Blah, blah, blah. Chris and I have made...
I can't believe that's in the caption. Start again, please.
Blah, blah, blah. Chris and I have made the difficult decision to end our marriage after 7 years. We love each other very much and will continue to focus on raising our son. We would appreciate people respecting our privacy at this time. Blah, blah, blah. Not because I dropped some LBs and thought I could bag a basketball player. Basketball, 2 words. Basketball player. And not because he's a hot James Beard award-winning chef who can still pull some hot tail. Amicable and all love and respect. Family forever.
Interesting to see who of my friends liked and commented on this announcement. First of all. Second of all, I want to point out that she put on this Instagram photo of the two of them on the subway.
Holding her child's backpack.
Using the U2 song, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. Which actually feels really... I mean, I know you're offended by the use of U2, but I feel like I still haven't found what I'm looking for is something you say about a girlfriend you broke up with, not about the father of your child. I don't know. That to me feels really mean.
I mean, the problem is that song is like about God, not like personal relationships. But also, I think that the thing that really caps off is that it is the end to a weeks-long campaign she's been doing to try to get people to care about her relationship and like speculate if things were going wrong.
I think she was DMing Demois being like, word in street is there's trouble in paradise with Amy Schumer, but they're trying to make it work. Like, I think Demois just announced that they're trying to make it work.
Yeah.
Per Amy Schumer. Like, Amy Schumer, every time I hear about her and her marriage, I'm like, according to, like, who's asking?
No one was asking. She's just been like posting cryptic thirst traps. She's been speaking to the press. There was like a People magazine article that was like Amy Schumer and husband trying to make it work. And it's just like, who are they? Who is her husband? I have to
actually read you the craziest Instagram post she's ever posted. It's 2 down. So I guess a couple years ago, she got a hysterectomy, laparoscopy, and an appendectomy because of her endometriosis. And I guess there was an endometriosis like money drive. She posted, for the next 48 hours, Amy is matching donations up to $1,500 to support EndoFound's mission.
I guess they really need to sell that house.
They did for $1.5 million less. If you don't know, Amy Schumer has this like gorgeous mansion in Brooklyn Heights that they were trying to sell for like $14 million. They bought it for $12.5 million in 2022. They just closed the deal for 11.
Okay.
So I guess sorry, EndoFound, that all your money got lost in that gorgeous, gorgeous house.
Oh my God. $1,500.
That's just not a lot of money, Amy.
It's just not a lot of money for someone with like
millions and millions.
Another movie coming out.
I mean, she is easily worth $100 million.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think like equivalent from a net worth equivalent. What would it? It's like us being like, and for the next 48 hours, we're matching up to 15 pennies.
Man, it seems like the healthcare system really wrung her dry, huh?
Either that or her hot James Beard award-winning husband who could still pull a hot piece of ass.
I guess I think that caption to be like, we are getting divorced. It's not for any of these reasons.
I also am like, she keeps being like, yeah, I lost weight. That has nothing to do with my marriage. And I am like, yeah, we were just on our friend Devin's podcast. And I was like, it's so funny to be like, all these major life-changing things that has nothing to do with my interpersonal and intimate relationships. My body, my weight, my health. Why would that affect my husband? Why would that affect our relationship? Why would that affect
Mentally,
our marriage?
I'm fine.
Things that didn't affect our marriage. Money, sex, love, weight, children, life. It's a different thing that you haven't heard of.
Floral arrangements.
Thanks, Amy, for the update. Nobody gives a shit and we'll continue to not give a shit.
Caps off to you, my friend.
Way to keep us interested in the thing nobody cared about.
I hope you got the clicks. Oh my God, 88 comments. Were comments limited? Has she been limiting comments ever since she
called
got,
all Middle Eastern people rapists?
Since she got too Islamophobic on Maine?
Yes. Comments are limited.
Okay.
Oof. Can I say,
Deborah Messing gave her some hearts.
for someone with limited comments, it turns out she doesn't have many friends because I'm looking at her other Instagrams, 4 comments, 6 comments, 0 comments. Maybe she should turn her comment section back on because this is revealing that she has like no mutuals that like her.
Can I read this comment from Sophia Bush before we cap off for the night?
Sure.
It's so damn hard without having it to be hard for the world to see. So when the world sees, I'll say, be extra gentle with yourself. All love.
Wait, Sophia Bush said that?
Yeah.
I guess she would know a thing or two about a public divorce. So.
Yeah.
She can cross the aisle to see a fellow divorcee.
I guess I think the thing that's so funny about this public divorce for the world to see is that, like, who really would have found out? I guess it, like, maybe would have come up on a press tour at some point.
I think her sexual life,
it garners so little interest.
I can very easily imagine a world where she does a whole press tour and he doesn't come up. Except for, I guess she did a whole special about him. I guess the reason she has to say it is because she's going to do a whole divorce special.
Yeah, but I think for this to be like, God, it's so hard when the whole, like, Sophia got wrung out by the press. I think.
Yeah, because she's interesting.
Yeah, I know. And for Amy Schumer to be like, God, I must publicly acknowledge. It's just like really no one was asking. Caps off, one and all. And to all, a Merry Christmas.
Oh my God, we'll see you guys on the new year. If you are missing us too much, as I've said, we've got a lot of holiday movie reviews coming up. We're also releasing our question and answers that we did at our Patreon-specific holiday party back in October. We're also releasing our interview with the owner of Lord's, Dames, and Crevette, 3 of the hottest restaurants in New York City, with Patricia Howard, that we did at the Strand in September or October. We're also going to be doing Patreon episodes. So there's just like a shit ton of content coming in addition to Worms of the Wise. And of course, don't forget, signing up gets you the full 6 years of backlog. So if you are driving across the country twice for some reason, if you have a family you can't stand the sound of, if you just feel lonely and need new friends, it's all on the Patreon at patreon.com/goodnoticings.
Round into your podcast app. Your friends are waiting there.